Hello everyone and welcome back to Literature of World of Warcraft. In this episode we'll be covering the Founding of Quel'Thalas. This book can be found on the second floor of the Scarlet Raven Tavern in Eastern Duskwood. As usual, there will be a link to a reading of this book in the description of this video, but without further delay, let's get into the literature. This story begins around 6,800 years before the opening of the Dark Portal, after the Highborn were exiled following the War of the Ancients for continuing to use arcane magic which had been outlawed due to being part of the reason the Burning Legion found Azeroth. The book begins with the High Elves being led across the sea by Dath'Remar, braving the harsh maelstrom in a desperate hope to find another place in the world that they could call their own, preferably a place containing high amounts of ley energy. The High Elven ships at last found shores to dock upon in what would be known in later generations as Lordaeron. They tenuously settled within the Tirisful Glades. A number of High Elves had gone mad in the few years they lived there. The populace theorized that something evil slept beneath that part of the world. As it turns out, that theory proved to be true many years later when warriors went after the blade Strom'Kar, the Warbreaker, and priests went after Xal'atath, Blade of the Black Empire, for their artifact weapons in the Legion expansion. The warrior adventurer plucked Strom'Kar from the brain of a long-dead Cathrax monster named Xal'atath the Corruptor. The sword was what kept Xal'atath dead, so the warrior who withdrew it was forced to battle the mighty Cathrax and emerge victorious. The Twilight's Hammer attempted to rouse Xal'atath once more using the priest artifact Xal'atath, but was thwarted when a priest adventurer killed the wielder and used the dark blade to consume the rest of Xal'atath's power. Back in the story, Dath'Remar, who had taken the surname Sunstrider, which translates to He Who Walks the Day, had heard news of this madness and decided to take his people further north. This journey was no easy task, however. The High Elves, being cut off from the life-giving energy of the Well of Eternity, found themselves prone to starvation and disease. The most jarring change to adapt to was their lack of immortality, and them now being susceptible to the elements. The High Elves found that they had shrunk slightly in height, and their skin no longer kept its once violet pigment. All was not bad, however, as the High Elves also encountered many wondrous creatures native to this area that they had never seen before. They also happened upon tribes of primitive humans that hunted throughout the ancient forest. However, they soon encountered their direst threat in the form of the Amani trolls. The mossy green-skinned Amani trolls were very ferocious, but that did not mean that they were animals. The Amani were also cunning and tactful. The trolls were tough as nails too, being able to regenerate lost limbs and heal grievous physical injuries. These trolls called the temple city known as Xul-Aman their home, and worked hard to keep unwanted strangers away from their lands. The High Elves disliked the ritualistic and barbaric nature of the trolls, so the elves showed no mercy whenever they were forced to fight. After years of wandering, the High Elves found a land in which they felt suited them, and settled into a kingdom known as Quel'Thalas, towards the northern forests of the continent. The elves soon realized their mistake when the Amani attacks became more and more frequent, and more ferocious. The elves had supposedly built their kingdom upon lands that used to house an ancient troll city that was still held to be sacred by the Amani. The High Elves had the magics that they were exiled for using to their advantage, however, and kept the trolls at bay. Some elves still feared the Night Elves' ancient warnings and thought to erect a barrier that would mask their use of magic from the eyes of the Burning Legion. The Convocation of Silvermoon was created to serve as rulers to the High Elves, though Dath'Remar and his Sunstrider descendants held a bit of political power through the years. The Amani trolls held their attacks for a time, building up their numbers for nearly 4,000 years. When the time was right, they once again charged from the forest and laid siege to Quel'Thalas. And that's where the book ends. It felt a little short, but it leads nicely into other books, and it had some good imagery to it. All in all, score-wise, I'd give this story a 2 out of 5 for story, 2 out of 5 for length, 4 out of 5 for imagery, and a 3 out of 5 for personal enjoyment. With a total score of 11 out of 20, I think that this is a nice short read, maybe for people who are just getting into the lore books, and might not want to have to read a long text. although I'd recommend reading it online if you're a Horde player, or just a player who doesn't like Duskwood, since that's the only location I'm aware of this being. And that about wraps it up. Thank you to everybody for watching and have a great day.